All right. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today for our Idaho Skills Matrix training / release of the new database. We've got just a few of us here in the state office: James Eller, Bruce Sandoval, Julie Phelps, and Travis Youngberg, and myself, Ori Winger. So we'll go ahead and just dive right into it. Hopefully I got confirmation that everyone can see and hear, so hopefully that will continue. If we do lose connection, please interrupt us so that we can reconnect. The agenda we're kind of going to go over. We're probably not going to take a whole hour, but we kind of scheduled that just in case. First half will probably be about 20 to 30 minutes, and we'll talk about the purpose of the skills matrix, the roles within the skills matrix database, the process for gaining it or updating, and then we'll do 2 live demos of the non-supervisor and the supervisor. Then we'll have questions and comments. And then after those questions and comments, anyone who is not a delegator, one that gives out job approval authority, can then go off the phone, or if you want to stay on, I guess you could, but there's really no need. And then those delegators just stay on the line, and we will do the live demo of the delegator database, and then have questions and comments from the delegators, and then wrap it up. So keep going. So the purpose of the Idaho Job Approval Authority Skills Matrix. It's been a long time coming. It's been like a year and a half almost of trying to get engineering and ecological sciences job approval authority combined. It's now there. This is all required through policy, both on both sides. There used to be the paper copies, the Excel sheets that had to be updated. They kind of were a mess at times, depending on how they were managed. And so now everything is online. Everything is linked to the SharePoint. We have real-time data. And it's easier also for all of us to check job approval authority for everyone. That being supervisors, delegators, people doing spot checks, individuals that may be wanting just to see where they're at currently, which is a valuable source, and then also so that you can know who can sign or certify for a practice within your division or area or a nearby field office so that you can request help. So those are some of the purposes of the skills matrix. We currently have 4 roles within the skills matrix. We'll start with the non-supervisor. This has been given to everyone in the state. You have read-only permissions. You can create reports, and like I said, look up who can certify a practice, maybe compare with another employee so you can, I think it's just going to come to the middle, so that it will, so you can, know who to get guidance on for certain subjects or certain controlling factors and practices. Then we have the supervisor role. They have all the same permissions as non-supervisor, plus they can also concur for their employees on their job approval authority. And we'll go into that step and kind of when that happens here a little bit later. Then we have the delegator. So they have everything like supervisor and non-supervisor. They can enter job approval authority for individuals, and they also can approve job approval authority for individuals. One note that a delegator can only approve job approval authority for what they have or below. So they can't say, oh, I'm going to grant you job approval authority if they don't even have that job approval authority currently. And then they also can work with the employees when we have trainings or experiences in the field where we feel like that job approval authority needs to be raised when those requirements are met. There's also the administrator permissions. Typically, there's going to be one from engineering, one from ecological sciences. Currently, that's Julie Phelps and myself. and we can change those controlling factor requirements based on what the state leadership team decides needs to be changed through kind of those processes. So, okay, so what's the process for gaining job approval authority? We've already done this for everyone in the state currently, and if you're a brand new employee, maybe this hasn't happened yet, but everyone has been entered, and I want to encourage everybody to go in and make sure that it is there. We've had a few that have gotten screwed up through our process of migrating to the SharePoint. So most of the time that data is still there, it's just not finding it. So we got to make sure that everything's there. And if you do have the paper copy, and we can go back to it and enter it again if we need. There haven't been many errors. Most of the time it's because I went in there and messed things up and then had to go and fix my own errors. So for a new employee, Julie or myself will be adding the new employee as a user in the skills matrix. And obviously that could change as well, whoever is responsible. Number two, the state skills matrix master is going to be given to new employees or partners when they are first brought on. This is a step that I think is really important because we can discuss with the employees where they can be, where they should be with their job, and what's kind of expected. That's going to be given to them through the supervisor, the ARC, area engineer, however that has been delivered. How to use it, how to use the matrix, what they may have currently. If they're brand new, starting out of college, they might not have much job approval authority until they understand the practices. And that's okay, but knowing how that process and what they need to understand to be able to get it is there. Then the ARC and the area engineer will enter that employee data into the skills matrix database. So that'll be given, the employees will give that to the ARC or area engineer depending on what discipline they are. Then the ARC, area engineer, state discipline leads will complete the job approval authority for each employee with the delegator's file. That delegator's file has been sent to everyone. If you can't find it because you got a whole bunch of emails, please let me know or Julie know and we can get that to you. Then the supervisor will concur on the skills matrix through the supervisor file. And we'll go through all these steps so that everyone can kind of see how that works. And then the employees can access their reports through the non-supervisor file. That non-supervisor file was sent with the bulletin, and I'll kind of go through those steps of how using it. Process for updating job approval authority and kind of why would we need to update it. Obviously, when people improve or maybe a spot check needs some correction with job approval authority, we need to go in there and update it. They're through attending trainings, experience, maybe demonstrated competence for a practice. That's where it would need to be updated. So the employee would work with the ARC or area engineer to establish that authority for the improvement and then go back to those steps 3 through 6 of having one with authority delegate it and then go on through being able to print the reports. Okay, so who are the delegators? We've kind of talked about those a lot. Starting with engineering, the area engineers are responsible for all engineering practices within their respective areas for approving that. And then the area engineers receive their authority from the state conservation engineer, and the state conservation engineer will also give that to all state office staff. So currently that's Bruce, Mike, and Ryan. Ecological sciences, the ARCs and the state discipline leads will provide that authority or delegate that authority. So you got Amber, Eric, Travis, Trisha, Brendan, and then James is currently standing in for forestry until we figure out where that goes there. And then also job approval authority for state office staff is given by the SRC. Okay, so that went pretty quick. I know there's a lot of information there. We do have this recorded, and I'll also link these. I'll show you where I'm going to put the training or this recording on the SharePoint so people can access it later. But we'll jump into the live demos and kind of go through where everything is going to be at, show the non-supervisor, supervisor, and then delegators hang on after the question and answer after supervisors. And we'll kind of go through the open with process and then typical messages that will kind of show up. And hopefully I can get those messages to show up. Access is kind of finicky, and we'll work through it. So, minimize my stuff here. So first off, I'm going to go to the SharePoint, Idaho SharePoint. I'm going to show you where we're going to keep this recording. So I thought we could put it, we already have a training library set up under technical services. So we'll click on technical services here. We'll go to the new training library, or possibly soon it might be changed to training library. We'll scroll down to the bottom, and we've added a new section here called the Idaho JAA State Skills Matrix. I'm going to post the links to the video and PDF for the process, kind of just outlining everything, and then probably I'll put the slides here as well. So that's where this can be accessed. Like I said, I'll send a link out to everyone with that little after this we're done. So let's go into the live demos. So in the bulletin, which I sent out, we've got the bulletin attached. We also have the attachment A here. Within the bulletin, we have instructions on how to save and use the matrix. So I'm just going to right-click and save it as. I'm just going to put it on my desktop because it's where I'm going to need it. You can put it anywhere you want. If you want to put a file, working with some people doing screen shares, I've noticed that their desktops are very full and cluttered, and I can't function that way, so put it wherever you need to, really. It doesn't matter where you want to put it. So click and save it. That's great. Save as, desktop, save. Okay. So then we find it right here. I would say the best practice to use is going to be right-click and open with. You're going to open it with this bottom Access 2016. Seems really silly, but this is the only way we've been able to get it to work consistently.
They had to include 2 versions of Access with Windows 10 so we could open the old files. Don't ask me.
And yet did not distinguish between them.
Right.
All of them exactly the same.
I haven't had any problem, by the way. I just
Yeah, it depends. It'll spin here for a minute as it pulls in information. I think it was saying my Wi-Fi or my internet speed is not super hot right now, so bear with me. Okay. So once everything gets loaded here, you'll want to enable your content. And it spins again. This error this message will continually come up. It doesn't matter what kind of permissions you have within the SharePoint. It doesn't matter what you have with Access. This error is going to come up with this database. Just click OK, and it'll still allow you access. Okay, so we're going to start with the very top. This is that matrix master that we talked about would be given to a new employee. Everyone's already received this, obviously, to input that data. You can open it up, print. Wow, that was great. So you can go through and look at all of these practices. and see what would be needed for each type. Hit with your next page down on the bottom left. Okay, so we'll close that print preview. You can create a report for an individual. Brendan is currently on another call, so we're going to pick on his, everyone can see what he has authority for. You select the participant or the person that you want to use. You can also type that person's name, and it'll search to those people. Start typing. If you want to filter by a category, you can. In this case, we just want to see his whole report. Maybe he wants to print it and put it in on his computer as a PDF currently. So we view this report. You can see that and go through that report, make sure, see that your levels are correct. If they're not, work with your ARC or area engineer. Some things did get adjusted so that we're consistent throughout the state. So check those. If you want to see what has been approved, you can use these filters here. They all work. If you want to see it for specific practice, you can do that as well. All of these buttons should work. If they don't, let me know. And if somebody's really wanting to try and make sure there's one that's broke, I'm sure you'll find one. So we'll go back to the menu. That's creating a report for an individual. You can also create a report for an area. Okay. So you could say, okay, in Area East, let's see what people have for cover crop. And like I said, you can type, you can scroll, however. See, in the Area East office, we'll see who has job approval authority for cover crop. And it'll pull up their name. So Neil, Eric, Kurt, all have job approval authority for cover crop currently, and their current levels. Okay? So that's useful when you're wanting to know who can certify a practice, what is needed, or maybe if you just want to bounce an idea off of somebody that knows something, this is a good spot to go to. Okay? You can create a discipline lead report here as well. So you want to see all that Travis Youngberg does as the agronomist, what practices they're responsible for. So if you're wondering, crap, who is over 314? Who's responsible for it? And what are those requirements? So it's interesting. It throws in this.
Giving you the key right there.
Yeah. It looks like, so this report basically is just giving you that skills matrix filtered down just to that one practice. I don't know why it was all of the. All those so yeah, we'll just go back. Knowledge, skills, and ability report. Okay, this is very similar. This is all within the same realm. If you're wanting to get more ideas on what is needed for job approval authority within each practice. Like I said, work with your ARCs, area engineers, and state lead disciplines, or state discipline leads to work with this. So this is the non-supervisor version, okay? Everyone has access to this and can pull these reports. Supervisors can pull it for themselves. They can pull it for their employees. However, you want to look at that. Okay, so we exit the application. Another error is going to pop up, that compact and repair error. Just dismiss it, hit OK. One thing that I realized, I haven't been using it on my desktop. I've been using it in another file. But Access will create multiple files of the Access database. Once you take out your link path or refresh that folder, it will then delete those extra copies. It creates a copy to make sure that there's a backup, but it's all backed up on SharePoint, so there's really no need for it. But it does it regardless on Access. So like I said, once you refresh that folder, it will disappear. Okay? This is the state supervisor database. So same process, save as. We're going to put it on my desktop, save it. Okay, it popped in right here, the State Skills Matrix Supervisor. I'm going to go right click, open with, use the bottom access. And we really like to watch that blue circle spin. Okay, we'll enable the content. We'll receive that error. The first time you open it up, you'll receive the error. But I've noticed that after I go back to that same file, the errors won't typically show up as often or at all. So the only thing that's different with the supervisor is we've got this new button called the Concur for the individual skills matrix. Each supervisor will need to go in and approve the skills matrix for that person or their staff. So we'll just go in as James Eller. I am currently James Eller. And so we're going to go look at Denise's report. So we can go review the report, and if there's anything that we feel needs to be changed, we can go and change that. Sorry, we can't go and change it. We need to request it through the delegators. But it's your role as a supervisor to make sure that your employees have the correct job approval authority. So once we've reviewed it and we feel that everything's okay, as a supervisor, you'll come in and select your name. So James, sorry, I'm gonna go back. So when we view the report, this is where the approval, the concur it shows is currently right here on that second row. Bruce, we have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Ori, it doesn't seem like the screen is moving with what you're talking about. I don't know if anybody else has that problem.
Delaying a little?
Yeah.
Is it delaying quite a bit?
Quite a bit, I think.
Okay, I apologize. I'm going too fast. Like I said, if the recording doesn't work, I can re-record it and go in slow mode because I tend to go very fast. So I'll back up. So this is the skills matrix for supervisors, okay? And it's got this button that says concur for an individual skills matrix. We'll click on it, and then we will select our employee. We're going to select Denise. Okay, we can review their report currently. It shows the last time that it's been updated. So we view the report. And we can review this report and see if there's anything we need to change, like I said. Up on the top, it'll spell out who it was last concurred by and the date. So we can see that this was done in August 2018. It's not super out of date, obviously, because we just barely input all this information. But once we're ready, and we feel like everything is good, we don't have any other changes that need to be made, we close the print preview, and then we would type our name in, and it'll search that whoever's the supervisor. You then check the box I've reviewed as a supervisor and concur with information. And then we click Save. And what I'll show you is that it did update. It'll keep your name as a supervisor here listed, so you can go back and do multiple people's permissions or concurring, sorry. So I'm going to go view the report one more time for Denise, and I'll show you that it did update the information up on the top right. It'll put that new date of February 5th, 2019. Okay. Only go in there and concur, obviously, for your employees. The database is not super smart, so it won't recognize who you are. But just be responsible, obviously. Everyone knows that. Okay, so then we'll close. Like I said, all the same things for the supervisors are there and available. So with that, I think I'll open it up for questions. And if you have any questions or didn't catch anything, need me to go back through it, we can. And then after questions, we'll dive into the delegators database.
Ori,
Yes.
when you concur for your employee, is that concurring for the whole skills matrix? Can you just do it one skill at a time, or do you just do the whole skills matrix and then you hit concur and that does the whole thing at once?
Correct, yeah, it is the entire skills matrix, not just one practice. So when you review that, you want to make sure and review it for everything. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Great. Okay, any other questions? One that kind of been around was a question about do we need to go in there and concur currently, right now, as soon as possible? When do we need to go concur, right? Supervisors need to go concur for an employee's job approval or for their skills matrix. They need to go and concur on that whenever there's a change, okay? So if job approval is updated, we need to have that be concurred in order for that to be there. We've went in, as we've entered this data, everything was, we said it was concurred because we got the paper copy. As the ARCs input it, they got the paper copy from the DC saying that, yeah, everything was good. Obviously, there might have been some changes, so go and review those and make sure that those are correct and go from there. So,
how do you know if it needs to be concurred if it's been updated?
Well, the supervisor should be talking with their employees. So if they go to a training, for example, and they obtain some new skill, they need to update the delegator goes in and approves some new controlling factor. They need to have that discussion with their supervisor. The supervisor should then go in and concur.
So it doesn't email them and say their matrix has been updated?
So we'll go through that in the delegator. Their email does work. So you may receive an email from the delegator. I'm going to encourage that, but I would say it might not happen all the time because it does sends an email for each controlling factor as the delegator changes it if you select that. But that's a lot of emails if there's a lot that has changed. So good.
This is Bruce. This question about the concurrence, basically Treg's question. Does the one concurrence apply to the entire database? In other words, when the supervisor concurs, are they concurring for ESD and engineering practices?
Correct. Yep, everything.
It's going to be awkward for a little while because we.
Yeah, and I would say, be patient with us as we go through this. There's going to be some changes, and there's going to be some adjustments that we're going to have to make, and maybe some things are going to have to change. We're going to have to be a little flexible. So be patient with us at the state office as we work through the kinks of this database. But it's there. You can print your reports and review them and check them out. So, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for all of your guys' time. We'll excuse those that don't want to participate in the delegator kind of tutorial or live view. So if you want to check out, you can. If you want to hang out and see what everything is, you can, I guess, if you'd like. So. Okay, so going into the Delegator's database file. Like I said, I've emailed this. If you've lost that copy, let me know. We can easily send it again. It's no big deal. Save as. I'm gonna just put it on my desktop so we get the errors showing how they typically show. A lot of you maybe have already seen this as you've been inputting information, so it's maybe a repeat, but well worth the time. Open with, use the bottom Access 2016. As you can see, it shows up just a little different. We need to enable the content. What that enable content does is it syncs your permissions with SharePoint. So it's important that you enable that content. Click OK on that error or that message. Okay, so I'm going to start from just the beginning. Julie and I would either enter a user profile. So I'm going to establish one for myself, just as an example. You have to fill in all of these areas in order for things to work. The state office, team is going to be state office, the location is going to be Boise. If it's partner employee, we check this box here. Just kind of gives them a different, so that we can track that as well. Like I said, you can type the supervisor's name and it will enter in here. This was something I found out recently with the database that you can type it in. We would save. That's kind of a simple process Julie and I would do. Okay, next, the ARCs and area engineers will go in and, we would provide that skills matrix master to someone who came on new, someone who came from another state, so they can compare their current job approval authority to what our kind of lines are. And so you'd use that, they would have that, fill it out, give that back to you, and then you would enter it. Everything in the database is run by last name, first name, so I just typed my last name and it came in. I'm going to go in, let's say 314 brush management. Okay, so our acres, we'd update it. You'd select it for each controlling factor. We'll give ones here. If you want to add a comment here, you can. Those comments will stay until a new comment is added in the approval or delegation part, which I'll show that. So I'm going to put a comment. Okay, so now we'll save it and it will sync everything there. It leaves the planner's name in. Go in and just do one more. Just so we can have something to look at. Save.
Ori, I have another question.
Yeah.
I noticed on one of the reports you showed earlier, there were zeros, I want to say, and now I see that here.
Yes.
Rather than blank. I don't think we on the engineering side have put any zeros in there. It's just blank. Is there a meaningful difference between those two?
I think if it's blank, it typically will show 0.
No.
Doesn't? Okay.
show anything.
So if we put like a 0, basically saying I wouldn't have
Right.
approval to certify that practice. Now I don't know if there's anything different with blank or 0. I don't know. I thought they would have went all 0, so that was so. But I don't think there's any difference. So once we get our database in there, go ahead, Julie.
Could you show like 533 and show
Yeah.
like their controlling factors for like an engineering practice?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, there's going to be multiple.
Yeah.
You have to give them to each one of those.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you'd have to.
Well, technically you don't have to, but if you don't, that means there is none, and that might be the limiting thing for them.
Correct. Yeah, so if you only put in the 2, it's like, okay, well then you don't even have, you can't sign off.
But sometimes that's appropriate too. Axial flow pump, there's nothing in there because we don't expect that to be used.
Right. So yeah, there's multiple. Very good point, Julie. Thank you. Okay, so we'll return. Now what we can do, we can go and find myself here. Can't even spell my last name. So I can pull up my report. It's going to show that nothing has been concurred. We can filter with these. So we'll view this report. I just want to pull it up, and it shows that nobody has concurred. It does show that my comment came through. I don't know if everybody can see that. Comment does show up on the report, so you know they need to submit 2 plans for approval, or need to have approval prior to getting this authority. Then those comments will show there.
You could see there too where there were blanks, like Bruce was
Yeah.
talking about. But a 0 is the same thing as a blank.
I think that's what's
Yeah.
happening, yeah.
Yeah.
Although the one report showed 0s.
Yeah, I did see some of them said
Yeah, I
zero.
was gonna add, that's what I was.
There was a note on the back. Did you see that where it said, please make it 0? Did you see on the
other
when you're
page.
entering JAA? See that note right there? Max approval
Does not
authority
apply,
categories.
leave it 0.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't apply, leave it 0. If it does apply, then put it 0. But yeah. Okay, so the new buttons that showed up here, you can edit a user profile. Julie and I are going to be the ones managing entering the user profiles and editing them. But we didn't feel like there was a need to build a new database just for those 2 buttons, so we just left them here. So the buttons are just right above the concur for an individual's skills matrix, where the supervisors will concur. The delegate buttons are right here. So you can either go in and do it by an individual. So you can go select the list. I'm going to type in my name and then view records. Now, I don't typically love this one because it puts all of my practices in here to approve, to delegate. I like to filter it. Usually we have people are specific to what they're looking at, right? We're looking at engineering practices, or we're looking at ecological sciences, or we're looking at the agronomy practices versus biology practices. So there's another, I'll show you that. But this gives a list for everything. Say somebody put in something and you have JAA approval authority to approve all of that, just use this and just do it by individual. That works. And we'll go through kind of all of this process here in a minute. So we'll close and then close again. We're going to go in here to delegate by JAA approval authority by category. This allows you to apply filters. So I have to come in and put state office, however, wherever the employee is. So we'll come in and put my name. And let's say we want to look at, say I'm Travis Youngberg and I want to come in and approve the agronomy practices. You can do it just by the agronomy. You can do it by practice code. You could do it by the name. Those sync automatically. You can filter also if you have, people in the state all have ones and you feel like the whole state should have twos. You can search and filter, and however in that way. You can leave this to be concurred by is empty because currently there is no concurred. I'm just going to leave those blank right now. But one of the good ones is this approved by is empty. So we'll check that box and apply the filter. That'll give me all of the agronomy practices. So it looks like I have 2 agronomy practices that need to be approved. If they need to be changed, if you feel like that should be, really this should be a 0. I shouldn't be able to certify anything. And whatever needs to be reviewed needs to be typed in there. And then you want to approve it. You type your name, first name, last name. I'm just going to put my own so I know to delete this. You can leave the date empty and it'll just put today's date, or you can maybe put yesterday if you feel like you really want to. The supervisor will show up automatically. And like I said, this is that button that it was broke a while ago, but we've got that fixed. The email does work. It sends an email for each controlling factor. So if I check this box and save, it's going to send James an email and say, hey, James, Ori has approved his own, which it wouldn't happen. But Ori approved it, and you need to go concur. So this is what Julie was saying. Will that email work? So if we hit save, there will be an email sent. You have to have Outlook currently open. It's kind of weird because you don't ever see it sent in your Outlook, so you don't really know the email's been sent, but it sends it. So now this updated, but prior we had, before we had 1 of 2. Now that first controlling factor was gone. So it automatically resets that, filters back all of those practices. And now I only have 1. And I'll show kind of where this is useful here in a minute. So I'm going to uncheck the box to send an email because I don't want James' email to get lit up. But what you can do is you can send one and say, hey, this has been updated. Then he can go concur for all of everything that's there. So if you do 1 per employee, that's a good, I think that would be a good number.
That'd be the kind way to go.
Yeah, that's good. Now, it shows that I currently have nothing left on the agronomy practices to approve. So hopefully I can close this. Okay, we're going to come in here and see if. So I'm going to clear this out, just backspace it, and apply the filter, and just put all the rest of them in. So it shows that I have 3 more that are there that need to be approved. Shows that range management specialist is kind of the lead discipline, but that could also be the ARCs. The ARCs could come in and approve that. Let's go to the 533. So here's our pumping plant controlling factors. Yeah, so that shows there. Like I said, I'm not going to go through and approve these, but that's how the process works. How it will show on your report. I'll show it here. So it shows that this has been approved. It shows that it hasn't been concurred. The process of being concurred comes after the approval. When we first input all of this data, we had the supervisors approve it or concur it, then approve it. That was just for inputting this data. Now that everything's set up, the supervisors should concur after the approval. Okay, so it still shows that some of these need to be approved. You might say, hey, you know, Bruce, who do I need to go, you know, talk to your area engineer, I guess it would be, and say, hey, these questions will come. Hey, area engineer, I need approval for pumping plant. And honestly, for me in the state office, being a business tools coordinator, I don't need job approval authority for pumping plant, most likely. So maybe that'd be a discussion to be had. You know, why do you really need it? Or do you need livestock pipeline? You know, maybe somebody might want to do some planning as a soil con or a range con as livestock pipeline. And that's up to Bruce's shop and the area engineers how they want to move with that. Similarly with ecological sciences. So real quick, I want to show, this is to create a report, so I want to go back to my main menu. A lot of times the close buttons up in the top right don't work. It's got to use the return to main menu. I'm going to go create a report. Travis has been working hard and diligently on his job approval authorities and getting them updated, but I'm confident that there's one or two that he hasn't done. Mm-hmm. And there may be some that have been entered that he needs to go approve. So I'm going to come pull it for Travis. We're going to say that our approved by is empty. You could say if it was approved, you could go look at it and review it, but most of the time we're going in to make sure that we get it approved and delegated properly. So we're going to apply the filter and we'll see how many practices for agronomy there are. It looks like some have been entered, Travis.
You got 88 in there.
So currently there's 88 that...
Remember, those are each individual are the individual controlling factors.
Right.
So what that is there were some controlling factors that were missed the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm catching those up. But I still got 88 to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's typical throughout all the disciplines, and I'm guessing also with area engineers or the ARCs going and reviewing, similar. So, so as you go in and approve it, you can approve it and then save it, and then it'll make it down to 87. So you don't have to go. We had a problem before is you would do the one and then you have to save it, and then you go to 2, and you save it, and then you have to go back to 1 and go to 3, and it'd just be a mess to kind of go through. So make sure you use those filters. They do work, and they're very handy. So trying to think of anything else in this database that would be useful. But I guess let's just open up the questions. What questions do you have going forward? Is anybody out there?
Hey, Ori, this is Eric.
All right.
Hey, Ori, it's Eric. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yep.
So, question for you, just since my situation was a little unique, and last week there were some differences going on with my JA. So what is, at what point, I mean, Mark needs to go in and concur everything that was imported last week. Can we go through that, or did James sign off on all of my JA, or where are we at?
So when I went in and input your information, and then all of a sudden we had duplicates, because when we initially put in your name, we put in Eric Watson as the user. And I went in through the back end and edited it and changed it to Watson Eric. Long story short, we had a duplicate, and I had to go erase the stuff that I had re-entered, and everything that was entered previous had James entered it right. I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
I knew I did.
Just the name was flipped.
Yeah,
You started with first name first and then last name.
I didn't use this edit user profile to correct it, and so it didn't grab all of the data, and it was still there. So if we go into yours, Eric, it's going to show that Mark has apparently not concurred it. So I'd just say have him come in there and go and concur. for that approval. Some of the items haven't been,
When was it approved? I'm just looking. Oh, in October?
yeah, in October.
Okay.
So you put it
Yeah,
in.
I wasn't going crazy. I
No.
just couldn't remember what I did.
It's just that first name, last name.
Yeah.
And when I went in to look at approvals, I was like, wait a minute, the name's flip-flopped.
Yeah.
That's why, because I was looking for his name at the end of the report and it wasn't there.
And that's my bad. I entered the name backwards.
Yeah, we just had to figure out how to fix it back.
That's why Julie and I are going to be responsible for inputting it.
Yeah, right.
Just so that it doesn't get snarled.
So back to your question, Eric, the concurrence, yeah, we need to have, and I don't know how, if you want to have, you print it out and say, here you go, Mark, take a look at it, and then have him go in there and input it, whichever way is going to work for you, I guess.
Well, I think it's been scrutinized enough, don't you?
Possibly.
No, I'm just joking there. So yeah, we'll do that. So go back, Ori, for say on the Delegator, I go and update in an individual. So I had this come open a couple times. So in the process of doing some trainings and being out in offices, I've gone in and edited individuals' JA for certain practices, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the whole email, after I go in and load that and increase their level, there was that box, to check to send an email. Now, go over that one more time. So unless the supervisor's email is open, they will or will not get that email. Is that? If I just touch on that again.
Yeah. So in order for the email function to work, whoever is clicking save has to have their email open. The email will come through to the supervisor regardless if their Outlook is open. It's just whoever is hitting save. You have to have your Access and Outlook open at the same time for them to communicate. Which most of us leave our email open all the time, but there may be a chance you don't. So yeah, if you want that email function to work, it's a very basic, very not detailed email. So if you wanted to send your own email, you can. Hey, I updated JAA, go and concur. Whatever. And there's a little note on that on the bottom of the checklist that says make sure your Outlook is open. So it'll kind of remind you as well. Any other questions?
Ori, how big is this delegation list? How many people have permissions for this?
Right here. Here's your
3 plus 6, something like that.
Okay.
That's it. They're all listed right there.
And on that note, would we possibly get Kevin added to that because he's going to be delegating some ecological ones as well in the biology realm?
Bruce and I need to talk about that. He's looking at me funny, so we're trying to maintain some consistency between engineering and ecological sciences, knowing that they're different, but we're trying to keep it at certain positions. So we'll talk that over. I'll get back to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Any thoughts from the two big bosses?
I would just say, Amber, for me, I would say, if there was an analogy between Kevin and, let's say, somebody we would identify as a division engineer, the answer would be no. They wouldn't be a delegator, but what they would do is recommend to the area engineer that, the new tech in Mountain Home or whatever has been working hard, been working with them. I think they should have JAA in these practices at these levels. And then the delegator, though, the area engineer is the one that would actually do it.
And I'm good with that. The thing is, Kevin will have more job approval in some of those practices than I will, and so I can't delegate it. So I guess it would just be going to the state specialist. So,
yeah, that's the same problem I have, right?
Yeah, yeah. And in that case, again, if it was on the engineering side, there are two possible fixes or remedies. One is that I could increase the area engineer's authority up to what it needs to be. Said another way, what Ori said earlier about having adequate JAA. You can't give something or delegate something that you don't have. So that's one possible remedy, is that I would increase the area engineer's JAA to match what was appropriate for somebody in the area. Or, and this is not my preference, I could sort of bypass the area engineer and I could delegate directly to somebody in the area.
Yeah, and at this point, it doesn't really matter to me. I just want to make sure that we can ease the burden on, so we don't have to send everything to the state office, that we can get as much taken care of, at the area level, so you guys aren't completely overburdened. So whatever way you guys come up with, we will totally make it work.
I appreciate that, Amber. We have a unique problem because we supervise folks with skills greater than our own, right? Because we have so many different disciplines beneath us, whereas engineering, they have one discipline. It's a little bit more linear. So we'll work out a solution for you.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
One thing I'd like to point out is that as you guys know, you should know from the bulletin, our Ecological Sciences Job Approval Authority has been uploaded to e-directives. So that's our state supplement. Along with that is the general manual Job Approval Authority information, and also what we sent out with the bulletin is the guidance from the National Engineering Manual, right? Bruce? State supplement. Both. Right, and state supplement. So be sure to reference all that material. One thing I just want to mention too is that you should read the national policy first, followed by our state supplement, because that gives you the complete policy. Don't just read the state policy because it doesn't have everything. When we draft these state supplements, we don't reiterate national policy. We only expand on it or specify, and we can't leave anything out. The same goes for the conservation planning policy. When you're reading the planning policy, make sure that you're reading the national policy first and then our state supplement. One thing that you brought up, Ori, is the expectation for reviewing JAA. Yes. So the expectation is that supervisors are going to review JAA annually when they're doing their performance reviews. If there's updates, if there's things that need to be done, they should discuss it at that time. And technically, we're supposed to be reviewing each controlling factor every 3 years and updating them. And all that's in the policy, just to clarify.
But if we wait till the end of 3 years to update somebody, then we're going to have a lot of them to do all at once. So it'd be good to space them out.
Yeah, exactly.
There's some out there that I inputted for last time they've been updated, 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some old ones out there.
One thing that you asked too is what happens when people transfer out of state. We should print out the skills, their master copy before we delete them from the system. We'll probably archive it so that it doesn't disappear, but print off a copy of their skills matrix and send it with them.
And I'll plan on doing that. I can, at least on the ecological sciences side, we've built a folder on the SharePoint that will house that for, each year we'll kind of, so people can, hey, I don't have that anymore. Hopefully individuals are printing those off and saying, I'm going to take this to my new job and say, here it is. But a lot of cases, I think people forget that aspect. So before we delete them, we'll make sure and save that copy of PDF.
Yeah, it is the individual's responsibility to maintain it, however.
Yeah. Okay. There's no last questions. We'll go ahead and close. Thank you, everybody, for your help and assistance. And like I said, be flexible. Let us know if you have any questions. Julie knows more about the database than I do, so.
Thanks.
No, ask us if you have any questions. Let us know. We'll figure it out, or we'll talk to the developers and figure it out that way. So, thanks again for your time, and yeah, have a good day.
Take care.